The ending of Backrooms reveals that the Backrooms aren't just an endless maze filled with monsters, but something more like a system that studies, copies, and distorts everything that enters it. While most of the movie focuses on survival and getting lost, the final act reframes everything by showing that the real horror isn't being trapped physically, but being recreated as something incomplete. The Backrooms are less a place and more a process that turns people, places, and memories into imperfect versions of themselves. The film opens with researcher Narain Warren exploring the Backrooms before being separated from his team and eventually killed by a tall humanoid creature. This establishes the Backrooms as an endless, unstable space where normal rules don't apply and where people can disappear without explanation. The creature chasing Narain also confirms that the dimension is already inhabited, turning it from an empty mystery into something actively hostile. Clark, a struggling furniture store owner dealing with alcoholism, divorce, and failure, begins experiencing strange electrical issues in his store, including flickering lights and a mysterious breaker system that connects to nothing. These details suggest that something from the Backrooms is already bleeding into his reality, but more importantly, they reflect Clark's own unstable life. Just like the store, he's structurally off, disconnected, and slowly falling apart, making him vulnerable to something that thrives on broken people. Clark eventually discovers a hidden slit in his basement wall and phases into the Backrooms, where he finds endless corridors, distorted furniture, and traces of Narain's belongings. After being chased by an unseen entity, he escapes back, but the experience changes him because the Backrooms are no longer just a theory to him. The presence of furniture-like structures is especially important since Clark works in that world, suggesting the Backrooms are already reflecting parts of his identity back at him. This is the first hint that the dimension doesn't just contain space, but absorbs and reinterprets reality. Clark returns with Kat and Bobby to prove the Backrooms exist, but the expedition quickly turns deadly when Bobby is killed by an unseen creature in a deep corridor and the group is pulled further into the maze. Clark becomes separated, wandering through impossible environments like an endless pool-like room before encountering humanoid entities that feel like distorted echoes of people rather than fully formed beings. After Clark disappears and sends a voicemail saying he won't return, Mary enters the Backrooms to find him, but instead discovers a version of Clark who is already mentally broken. He attacks her and drags her deeper into the space, showing that prolonged exposure to the Backrooms can fundamentally alter a person's sense of self. At this point, Clark no longer sees escape as meaningful because the Backrooms have become more comforting than his real life, which makes his transformation less supernatural and more psychological. Mary wakes up tied in a dining room-like space surrounded by still lives, imperfect human copies created by the Backrooms, while Clark forces her into a twisted therapy session. During their conversation, Mary directly challenges Clark's excuses and forces him to confront the reality of his failures, including the emotional damage that contributed to his divorce. This scene works as the emotional core of the film because the real conflict isn't survival, but Clark finally being confronted with the truth that he has avoided for most of his life. The arrival of Pirate Clark, a larger and more distorted still-life version of Clark, marks the climax of this psychological breakdown. The creature attacks and kills Clark, acting less like a random monster and more like a corrupted version of himself made physical. After Clark's death, Mary escapes through recreated environments, including a distorted version of Clark's furniture showroom before accidentally triggering a gas trap that allows her to be rescued by Async scientists. At Async headquarters, Phil explains that the organization developed MRI machines before discovering the Backrooms and shifting into mapping and research, while also revealing that new entrances are appearing in the real world. This expands the threat beyond Clark's store and confirms that the Backrooms are spreading rather than remaining contained. The most important reveal comes in the final imagery, where we see what seems like things that are happening in the real world, like missing signs of Kat and Bobby, and a still-life version of Mary sitting inside a poorly recreated interrogation room. This final image suggests that the Backrooms isn't just a place that traps people or copies them. It treats them more like patterns it can copy and reuse. So the Mary still life is the idea that once the Backrooms understands you, it can recreate a version of you. And the worst part is that it might not even know the difference between the copy and the real you. Ultimately, the ending reframes the Backrooms as a system that records and reconstructs reality rather than simply a place people get lost in. Clark's fate shows what happens when someone fully succumbs to that environment, while Mary's ending suggests that escape may not fully undo what the Backrooms have already taken. With new entrances forming and more copies appearing, the final implication is that the Backrooms are still growing and continuing to build their own distorted version of reality. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.